I watched through 5 hours of interviews with the head of Instagram to compile a list of 21 tips to help you grow your Instagram that come directly from the Instagram CEO himself. Let's dive into it. Number 1, sends per reach is the most important metric in the algorithm for reach. So if you're trying to grow your audience, focus on creating more shareable content. This typically means it's either relatable, educational, or something that sparks a discussion. Sends are the most social metric on the platform, and as Instagram's aim is to become the most social platform, this is what really drives the algorithm.
But one of the most important things to look at if you're trying to evaluate how your videos or anything is doing on Instagram is definitely the sends.
Number 2, likes per reach is the second most important metric. Some content just naturally isn't that sendable, and that's okay. The next metric you want to look at is likes. If you can get a large amount of likes, it'll push your content in the algorithm.
The 3 most important things are sends per reach or send rate. So basically take the total number of sends and divide it by the total reach. Likes per reach, same idea, and then average watch time if it's a video.
Now, one thing that can help you with the new analytics inside of Instagram is where it shows people what slide of your carousel people liked the post from, what part of your reel they liked it. This will help you figure out what's most engaging and you can double down on it. Number 3, average watch time is the third most important metric. Now, I was always of the thought that high watch time is higher up on this list than number 2 or number 1, but Adam has come out to say it's not as important as the 2 above.
Does like watch time matter?
Yeah.
Or length of time I spend on a reel?
Yeah, they definitely matter. They matter a lot less than sends, but they matter.
Which makes sense given that Instagram want to be more of a social platform rather than purely focused on consumption alone, which is also what Adam said.
We don't goal our teams on time spent. Time spent is, I think, a nice measure of how relevant we are in the world, but it's not our primary goal, because if we do that, we would go all long form video and we would lose that friend part, which I think is really at the heart of our identity, and I don't think we can lose that.
However, what I will add is your retention rate can be a great indicator to improve your content. It's the most accurate measure of where your content needs improvement or where things went well. If your retention drops at the start, you need a better hook or a better idea. If your watch time drops in the middle, you need to improve your storytelling or your editing. And if your watch time drops at the end, you need to improve how you wrap up your videos. Number 4, if you want to grow, create content that triggers an emotional reaction. Excitement, humor, fear, as it gets shared a lot more, which leads to better reach. This is honestly something I need to work on myself, as I'm often overly analytical, but tapping into emotion is one of the best ways you can create content that performs well because it really connects with people.
When you tap into understanding, like triggering an emotional reaction from someone, and ideally that emotional reaction is the desire to connect with someone else, that's where we've seen the highest velocity of conversion.
Number 5 is make your content viewable without sound, as a huge amount of people watch video without the sound on. Now, what this means is essentially subtitles are a must and engaging visuals are a good bonus. The other side of this is that a large percentage of users either don't speak English or it isn't their first language, meaning subtitles are really useful for these people and improve your reach.
I was curious if you know how many people watch Instagram with their sound off. Is that a stat that you know?
I don't have a stat to share, but last I checked, and I think it was roughly half. That's why captions are so important.
Yeah. This was even something that Mr. Beast talked about in a video with Mark Zuckerberg, where he talked about his videos that actually had no speaking in them perform the best because they could reach a wider audience and people didn't need audio on to consume it.
This is my most viewed video. It's just me running with progressively more and more money. And there's a reason why I don't say any words. So like I'm running with 40 grand and then 50, and I just go until I literally can't move anymore. It's pretty funny. And I would love to be able to talk in this, but the problem is if I say a word, boom, like the viewership's gonna get cut by more than half, because then it's like only gonna recommend it to people who speak English.
Yeah,
so
no, that's super interesting.
And number 6 is that your opening frame is absolutely crucial. Make it a good one, as this is the first impression. Now, pretty self-explanatory and follows on from the earlier point about your hook. Make your opening frame look interesting. This could be as simple as the setting that you're recording in, so make it a good one so you capture people's attention.
The packaging of a short form piece of content is the first frame.
Yes.
And the visual hook, right? And so the first frame and the visual hook should be able to be understood without language.
Yes.
That I think is like the most important piece of advice.
I totally agree.
Now, number 7 is to make sure that your text captions or your subtitles are visible within the feed view not just when they're expanded. We already know having captions is important, but where you place them is important too. If you go too low on the screen, they won't be visible when people are scrolling your feed. We'll chuck something on the screen that shows you where you want to put them within your videos. Often we put them just below someone's chin when they're speaking, but then obviously for certain videos that aren't talking head, there might be a different spot that you want to put them. Just don't go too low that, like I say, you can't see them when someone's scrolling.
Yeah, that's why captions are so important. That's why you got to make sure your captions are visible in the feed, not just in the full screen viewer. One of the classic mistakes is put your captions and you don't even see them until you expand the video, and then by then you probably have sound on anyway.
And number 8 is there is no optimal posting frequency, and consistency matters a lot more than frequency. Post what you can sustain long term rather than trying to hit an optimal frequency only to burn out. Now, I will add that Instagram have in the past suggested posting 10 reels or more per month if you want to grow your audience, which means 3 times per week roughly. Now, I personally would take this as your baseline. From there, think about how much effort is required to create your content. The more effort it takes per piece of content that you post, the less often that you should be aiming to post, assuming all other factors are the same. If your content is really hard to create, you post less often. If your content is really easy to create, you post more often. Then finally, take into account how much time you have, what your budget is, and what your goals are to adjust to a more accurate number of what you should be doing. The lower these are, the less often you should be posting. And this is why the optimal amount of posting frequency per week for one person could be 10 posts a week, whilst for another person, 2 might be more optimal. It all depends on you, what your goals are, your budget, your content, so many different factors.
You are a museum curator and you're trying to drive ticket sales, and you probably should post a bunch when there's a new exhibit coming out in order to build up some demand, but it doesn't make sense to post a bunch all the time. For a lot of people, it's more valuable to post more often because it gives you more shots on goal, so to speak. I mean, we're here in a football arena. But the thing there I'd be careful about is burnout, because let's say it is optimal from a reach perspective to post 2 things a day or 3 things a day or 4 things a day. But if that's not aligned with your goals because you can't keep that up, don't do it. You have to come up with a different thing that is, both good for engagement, but also aligned with your goals and your constraints.
And if you do want personalized Instagram advice to grow your business, you can book a call with me in the description of this video. We'll dive in, look at your situation, look at your account, look at your content, and give you personalized advice. Number 9, patterns and series work well to consistently create content that performs well. This is something that I've said for a while. If you can find a pattern that works, simply do more of it. I even remember a while back, someone within my niche who was giving Instagram advice had a few different hooks, and then one day a video that was opened with Instagram tip you didn't know existed just popped off and did really, really well. So from then on in, they doubled down and made a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4. And because all of those videos were doing well, eventually they got to like over 100 different videos of Instagram tip you didn't know existed, which helped gain them over 500,000 followers in quite a short period of time. The hook just worked so much better and was so much less time consuming than trying to figure out a custom hook for every single video.
Don't overreact to any one post, because something might have been weird that day. Look for the patterns. So for these types of posts, how do they do? For this other type of posts, how do they do? And then, double down on what works and maybe rethink what doesn't.
So if you notice that a particular series works well or a particular hook works well, you can just use that more and more consistently. It can be day 1, it can be part 1, it can be anything along those lines that once it works, you can just use the same thing and then add different content behind it. Now, number 10 is, despite popular belief, you don't need to be active at the time you post on Instagram. A lot of people used to say that if you're scheduled to post for 7 a.m., you need to be online and engaging with other accounts slightly before and after to maximize your performance within the algorithm, but this isn't true, and he came out and debunked it.
So I have a post, I'm gonna make it 10 a.m. And so from 9:45 till 10 a.m., I'm active and I'm responding to stories and I'm engaging, and then I make the post and I'm staying active. Does the algorithm reward me for that activity?
Not directly. Indirectly, it could happen, right? Because if you're on there a bunch and you're messaging people and replying to comments or whatever, they might see that and they might then tap on your profile and then interact with that content. And so indirectly, it could help.
However, what I will say is if you do spend time engaging with other accounts, whether it be replying to people, commenting on your content, or leaving interesting comments on other people's content, you will likely grow faster and receive more engagement. Not because the algorithm is pushing your content more, but simply because engaging with people gets you in front of them, which helps you obviously reach more people and therefore grow faster. So it's simply a good thing to stack as a habit. You post at consistent times, spend 10 to 15 minutes engaging with others, and this way you don't forget. But no, engaging with others won't directly boost your own content in the algorithm. Now, number 11, now on this topic, scheduling content is totally fine according to Adam and won't affect your reach. I will add a caveat that you need to make sure the scheduling tool is Meta approved and doesn't ask for your password. This is what Adam has said before in other content.
I schedule posts all the time.
Same.
I schedule mine for early because we're here on the West Coast. So a lot of my followers in the US, and I want to get my posts out before California's awake and before like New York is really into their day yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not up at 5 a.m. Well, actually, I am often up at 5 a.m. because I got little kids. But I'm not on Instagram at 5 a.m. when I schedule these posts.
And personally, I am still quite suspicious when it comes to new pages doing this. I personally would only suggest scheduling on accounts that are more established, as even the smallest of things can ruin a small page's reach within the algorithm, and sometimes it could be as finicky as something like this. So I would stick to manual posting if you're new, but if you're more existing, then scheduling is fine. Although, as Adam said, and as this video is about, he said no difference to scheduling regardless of size. Number 12 is that Reels are more engaging on average than static content due to sound and movement, but an amazing photo will outperform a boring Reel. And this is again something I've been saying for a long time now. Naturally, Reels are going to be more engaging than photos. That doesn't mean you can't create great static content, whether it's photos or carousels that perform well. In fact, one of my clients, we average anywhere from sort of 10 to 50,000 views per reel and a couple hundred to a few hundred likes usually. Then we posted this carousel, which I'll put up on the screen, and it's currently on 135,000 views, nearly 1,000 likes, and it's brought in 200 new followers. It's outperformed the majority of our reels, and it goes to show that images and carousels still work when you do a good job of them. Tip number 13 was to add music to photos if you want to increase your reach, and do the same with carousels. So this follows on from the last tip. If you are posting images or carousels, add music, especially with your carousels, as this means they can be featured in the Reels feed and pushed out to new people. Number 14, hashtags don't significantly increase your reach anymore. Now, you've probably heard me say this before, but they simply don't matter like they used to. It used to be everything when it came to reach in the algorithm, but now it practically means nothing. Whilst they have minor benefits, they just aren't really worth worrying about. Interestingly though, Adam has been going on a ton of podcasts saying they don't lead to any reach, they don't help you grow, they don't help your content get pushed.
Hashtags are no longer a primary way to increase your reach on Instagram.
They don't significantly increase your reach on Instagram.
Gotcha.
Contrary to popular belief.
Yeah.
It's just not an important thing for reach.
But then a few months ago, I did get a pop-up within Instagram saying if I add hashtags to my content, it will get more reach. So it is a little bit confusing when the head of the company is saying one thing and the app saying another, but personally, I don't think they have much of a benefit. Now, number 15 is focus on creating content that helps you achieve your specific goals, not just chasing reach for the sake of reach. Now, this is a big one, and it's something I touched on in a few recent videos. If your goal is to grow your business, focus on leads and customers more so than views themselves. Because if you're focused on views, you can create a silly little reel that gets 100,000 views, yet does nothing for your business, maybe even damages your business. Whilst you could create a simple video about your business, which may only reach a few hundred people, but might bring you a handful of new customers.
I think too often entrepreneurs and business owners and creators are focused too much on reach. And to be clear, I'm not saying reach doesn't matter. Of course it matters. If you post and no one sees it, then what's the point of posting? But again, the question is reach to what end? If you get great reach, but you're trying to sell shoes and none of your reach is actually helping you sell any shoes, then there's no point to it.
On the flip side, if your goal is maximizing reach, maybe you're a theme page or creator, then you probably worry less about leads and more about views and followers. However, even then, you should still probably be thinking about the end goal of why you want to grow your audience and what type of audience you do want to build. So a good tip here would be to write down your end goal that you're working towards and work towards that rather than being on an endless hamster wheel of chasing maximum views. Now, number 16 is Adam said Instagram is prioritizing original content over aggregated content. Now, personally, I'm still seeing them not necessarily do this all the time in the algorithm, although hopefully it's becoming more and more like this. So the jury's still out on this one, but we're still seeing a ton of aggregated content outperform the original. But this is what he's saying is a tip.
We should make sure that more value, if we can, flows to the original creators that make something than those who find that content and then repackage it and aggregate it from other original content creators. And that if we don't do that, we will just erode more and more trust with the original content creator community, which will be bad for us over the long run.
Now, number 17 is if you're under a few thousand followers, focus on growth instead of monetization. And you can then get to that later down the line. Now, this tip is more for creators than business owners, but either way, you're going to have limited time to put into your social media. And so if you put too much of that time trying to monetize too early, you're only going to slow down your ability to figure out how to create good content and grow an audience, which will then only hold you back in the long run.
The vast majority of creators are very small, and they're too small to monetize in a meaningful way. And so, yes, they care about monetization. They want to hear about monetization, but it's actually not the thing that they can or should really focus on, because if you have 2,000 followers, it's not really going to be the thing that you should spend your time on is figuring out how to grow your following, not try to make money from 2,000 followers.
And given that you have a small audience, you probably won't make that much anyway. So you're going to spend a lot of time slowing down your long-term results whilst also not getting much in the short term. Instead, if you focus all your attention that you put on social media on really mastering the art of content and building an audience, then you'll get to the point where it requires a lot less effort to get really good results because you know your audience, you know what works, you've built an audience, and then you have more time to put into monetization, whilst also having a much bigger following to then earn a lot more from when you do so. Now, it is worth having a rough idea of what you might want to do, but don't start pushing a ton of products and running a ton of sponsored content once you've just hit 500 or 1,000 followers. Now, businesses, obviously a bit different. You aren't trying to become a creator. You aren't trying to maximize follower growth. You more so want clients. So you can essentially monetize from day one, even if you aren't being overly salesy, just by having your account set up as a business on Instagram, where you might have a link to your website and publishing content. Even if it is purely value and education and entertainment based, you'll likely make an income off the back of it anyway. Now, number 18 is that niche content often performs better than trying to appeal to everyone. And as the saying goes, if you try to appeal to everyone, you often appeal to no one. This thing's true for many creators. Niche down and be authentically yourself without trying to impress everyone, and you'll see better results than watering everything down in an attempt to appeal to anyone and not offend anyone. That doesn't mean you have to purposely piss people off, and whilst that would work to get a lot of reach, and many people have done that, it just means you want to stick with what you believe and say what you think rather than, again, trying to change what you think to appeal to everyone. And number 19 is don't overreact to the performance of a single post, whether good or bad, look for pattern. Now, there are so many factors that play into the performance of your content. It could be something as trivial as one of your posts flopping. Heck, you could have a post flop on Instagram for something as random as it was a really nice summer's day and you have a local audience who are all at the beach instead of scrolling on Instagram, so you got less engagement. It doesn't mean your post sucked, it just means many outside factors came into play.
If you see a huge swing in what's going on, it probably isn't there was a huge change in how we rank content. It's probably more there was a huge change in the world.
Gotcha.
There might be, Mother's Day, everybody's posting pictures of their moms talking about how much they love them. That's actually content for you to compete with as a creator. Mm-hmm. Or there's seasonality, like if you have predominantly young people who follow you and school's out, you see the time spent on social media is going to grow. Mm-hmm. Holidays, same thing.
However, obviously, if you have bad performing content over a long period of time, then maybe there is something that needs improving. Now, on the flip side, you could have a post perform really well because, I don't know, everyone was on Instagram that day for whatever reason and scrolling through content and you got a ton of engagement and a ton of likes. It doesn't necessarily mean that piece of content was amazing. It could just mean something else played into it. On a more global stage, think about, big sports events, political events, holidays and celebrations, all which could either lead to more content being on the platform or less people being on the platform, both of which could lead to less engagement. So look at your analytics on the whole and don't make too many rush decisions based off of one post. Now, tip number 20 is don't chase every trend. Focus on what aligns with your brand and your goals. And when you do jump on trends, adapt them to your niche. Now, trends can be helpful to boost your reach because you can take advantage of a format or type of content that is working. But don't stray too far from your original strategy because you'll end up just relying on them and hopping from trend to trend to trend without building your own message. Number 21 is be patient with the algorithm. Don't expect big changes right away. And even if you start doing all the right things or you change who you're targeting, it takes time for the algorithm to notice and do something about it. In saying this, many times I have very much lost my patience with the algorithm and been frustrated. So don't be too hard on yourself either. If you do lose your patience, it happens to everyone and it is pretty frustrating in general. Now, that's it for today's video. If you have learnings of your own that you've picked up over the years through experience or trial and error, share them in the comments to help other people and see what we can get going.